Hello friends, in this video I'm going to show you how you could build a $19 Muldrotha the Gravetide deck. So total cost of this deck was actually just under $19. This was cards you see listed in today's video are price checked on TCG Player for their lowest price I could find, in condition anywhere from heavily played up to mint. And then this deck is 1DH legal, meaning all the cards in the deck are $1 or less, with the exception of the commander who can be up to $5, which won't matter in today's deck tech. This is a reanimator style deck, so you're going to use Muldrotha the Gravetide as a reanimation slash value engine piece, as she can play a permanent of each type from your graveyard once per turn. That means you can get lands, enchantments, artifacts, creatures, or planeswalkers. The downside is that this deck is a little bit commander centric, but it can function without her, although she does a pretty good job of protecting herself as well. And part of that is because we're running a lot of cards that are a low CMC, so she's able to usually play 3, 4, sometimes 5 different permanent types per turn, and several of those pieces are going to be able to protect her from removal. First off, we'll talk about Accelerants. We're running 16 of them. Search for Tomorrow, Rampant Growth, and Farseek all get us 1 land to the battlefield tapped. Search for Tomorrow, we have the upside of being able to suspend for just 1 green mana, and then Farseek can actually get us a couple different dual color lands in that it searches up a plains, island, swamp, or mountain card type. More traditional ramp, we've got Cultivate and Kodama's Reach, which get us a basic to the battlefield tapped and another to our hand, and then Beanstalk Giant, which we can send on an adventure to put a land onto the battlefield tapped, and then later we can play him for 7 mana as just a huge creature with power and toughness equal to the number of lands we control. Didn't use that very often, as there's a lot of other things that this deck wants to do, but a couple of times in playtesting I did put out the Beanstalk Giant just because I had nothing else to do with my mana, and a big body is always nice. Getting into the permanent types, so here's a bunch of creatures that Muldrotha can get back, each of which can be sacrificed to get a basic onto the battlefield tapped. And we have a couple other permanents, 1 artifact, 1 enchantment that basically do the same. You can sack them to get a basic land to the battlefield tapped. Here's a couple other Accelerants that fit well with our game plan. They each tap for a colorless, and when you tap them, you get to mill a card. So it gives us better card selection to use with Muldrotha or any of our other graveyard-centric cards. And then lastly, for Accelerants, we've got a few mana rocks, so artifacts that you can bring back. Mindstone, Erasca Relic, and Commander's Sphere, all of which can be sacrificed to draw us a card. The Erasca Relic comes with the upside of gaining us 3 life, but you can only do it if you have the city's blessing. Not hard to do since we're getting lots of permanents back from our graveyard, but just be mindful of that. Next up, we're going to talk about cards specific to our game plan. We are running 13 of them. So first off, we'll talk about enchantment auras that allow us to protect our commander. Spider Umbra has totem armor, so if Muldrotha would be removed, you basically destroy the Umbra instead. Thrall Retainer is essentially the same, except for it gives Muldrotha regenerate, so she is going to be tapped. And then Alexi's Cloak is going to be able to give Muldrotha Shroud at instant speed. Another upside of the Thrall Retainer and Spider Umbra is that it will give Muldrotha 7 power, so it gives her a 3-turn swing clock on opponents. There was many games where I'd choose to attack one opponent with just Muldrotha, just working on that commander damage, and then use my other creatures to attack another opponent or defend with or whatever. So you can put opponents on a 3-turn clock using either of these enchantments as well. More protection, but it's a little bit different. The Siren Storm Tamer you're going to use to essentially counter a spell that targets Muldrotha. You can, protect another creature if you want to, but Muldrotha is such a removal magnet that it's probably almost always going to be Muldrotha that's getting targeted. And then the Daring Apprentice can give you sort of a soft lock in that you can tap it to counter anything. I was typically using this to protect my board, but you can use it to, block an opponent from doing something else. And then the Aether Spellbomb is really utilitarian in that you can use it to bounce Muldrotha back to your hand. That's primarily how I used it to protect her. Then you're not having to pay commander tax. But you can also use it to bounce your opponent's creatures, and I was typically using this on either something really expensive that didn't have an enter the battlefield effect, just to slow an opponent down, or on token creatures, as that essentially removes them. You can also sacrifice the spell bomb to draw a card. So if you don't have other artifacts to sacrifice and bring back with Muldrotha, this gets you deeper into your deck. Next up, we've got cards that mill us some. So the Mire Triton is going to mill 2 and gain us 2 life when it enters. Also makes for a great blocker in that it's a 2/1 with Death Touch. Splinter Fright is going to mill us 2 cards at the beginning of our upkeep. It's got power and toughness equal to the number of creature cards in our graveyard. Since we have Muldrotha, we're going to be bringing them back often, so the Splinter Fright isn't usually going to be that big until late in the game, but you can sometimes manipulate your graveyard at instant speed and use that as a combat trick and hopefully turn a losing combat for you or a tie combat, which would have been a trade, into a victory where you get to keep your Splinter Fright. And then Sewer Nemesis is similar, except its power and toughness is equal to the number of cards in a chosen player's graveyard. You're going to want to choose yourself, because every time the chosen player casts a spell, they get to mill a card as well. So this helps get you more card selection and also gives you another mid to large size body. More cards that can mill us and also get us big bodies is Kiora the Rising Tide. She draws 2 and then causes us to discard 2 when we draw her. We don't really mind discarding, as essentially that gives us more card selection. And then if she attacks and you've got 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you get an 8/8 octopus creature token. It is legendary, so you can only get 1 of them, but I was able to get this really early, I think turn 4, and so getting an 8/8 on turn 4 in a casual pod is pretty powerful, and it's gonna turn some heads. Then we've got Renin 7, which usually when I play it, I'm using its -3, which gives us a Tree Folk token with power and toughness equal to the number of lands we control. You're almost never going to be missing land drops with Muldrotha out, so those are just going to get bigger and bigger over time. Also comes with the ability to +1 and mill 4 cards, or so we'll reveal the top 4 cards of our library, put all lands revealed this way into our hand and the rest into our graveyard. So it gives us more card selection. I did use the 0 ability, I think, once in playtesting, as it just allows you to dump. I think I put 4 lands onto the battlefield in 1 turn, but I was almost always using the -3 and then the +1. Also, being a Planeswalker gives you the ability to bring Renin 7 back, so having it removed doesn't matter so much. Lastly, we've got Elixir of Immortality and the Vulturous Zombie. The Elixir is really just there to protect our graveyard if we've got somebody who's going to target and remove the entire thing. We're going to crack this for 2 mana, gain 5 life, and then shuffle the Elixir as well as the rest of our graveyard into our library. I did only use this once in playtesting. I didn't find it too necessary, as the pods that I played in weren't running enough graveyard removal. So if I was to remove something, it would probably be the Elixir of Immortality if I wanted to put something else in that allows me to apply more pressure, but it is nice to have as a safety valve. And then the Vulturous Zombie is just a 3/3 flyer that gets really big. We're running a lot of edict type effects, which we'll show you in a minute, but oftentimes, at least per turn cycle, it's gaining +3/+3 because we're just forcing our opponents to sack things, and so it gets really big and can apply a lot of pressure or help us block. Next up, we're going to talk about the cards that interfere with our opponent's game plan. We're running 16 of them. We'll start off with the edict type effects that I talked about. We've got a Curse Marauder, Fleshbag Marauder, and the Merciless Executioner, all of which force our opponent or force each player to sacrifice a creature. The Accursed Marauder comes with the upside of forcing a non-token creature sacrifice, so oftentimes you're not wanting your opponent to sack a token. They're going to just get rid of a 1/1 elf or sapperling or whatever. Sometimes you can force them to sacrifice, one of their more important creatures that way. More edict type effects, we've got Demon's Disciple, Plaguecrafter, and the Eldest Reborn. Demon's Disciple comes with the upside of being able to force an opponent to sacrifice a Planeswalker. The Plaguecrafter does the same, but if they can't get a creature or Planeswalker, they have to discard a card from hand. This is probably the best of the edict effects. And then the Eldest Reborn is one of those saga enchantments. So everybody's going to sack a creature when it enters, or each opponent, I should say, is going to sack a creature when it enters. The next turn, each opponent's going to discard a card, and then the following turn, we get to put any creature from any graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. Or you can also get Planeswalkers, although I never ended up doing that in playtesting because there aren't a lot of Planeswalkers in my playgroups. For more targeted removal on enchantments, we've got Binding the Old Gods, Awaken the Honored Dead, and Seal of Primordium. Binding the Old Gods and Awaken the Honored Dead can each hit a non-land permanent. They're also sagas, so they're going to get sacrificed and you're going to be able to bring them back. Binding the Old Gods is on the second turn going to allow you to fetch a forest from your library to the battlefield tapped, so that ramps you a little bit. And then the third saga, I didn't really find it impactful as it gives all your creatures death touch. It allows you to be aggressive. I think maybe one time in playtesting this mattered, but usually it's just giving your creatures death touch and then going to the graveyard for you to be able to bring back again. Awaken the Honored Dead helps us in that on the second turn it allows us to mill 3 cards, and then the third time it triggers, we can discard a card to return a creature or land from our graveyard to our hand. It doesn't matter too much, but there were a couple times I actually used this to get Muldrotha back, knowing that it was going to go to Saga or Chapter 3, and it was the very end of somebody's turn. They got rid of Muldrotha, put her in my graveyard, and I just allowed it to happen, knowing that this was going to trigger, and I'd put her back in my hand. Seal of Primordium is not as utilitarian as the other two, as it only allows you to get rid of an artifact or enchantment, but you can do it at instant speed in that you have to sacrifice it to do so. More artifact enchantment removal, we've got the Insidious Fungus and the Canker Bloom. Canker Bloom comes with the upside of being able to proliferate, so if you wanted to speed along those sagas, you can, increase the counters on them. And the Insidious Fungus allows us to ramp and draw a little bit, as it gives us like an explore type effect. But usually I was using these to get rid of artifacts or enchantments. And then the Outland Liberator can also be sacrificed to destroy an artifact or enchantment, but it's one of those werewolf cards with the Daybound ability, so if nobody casts a spell in a single turn, it becomes nighttime, and the Outland Liberator flips over to the Frenzied Trapbreaker, which can allow you to just attack and destroy target artifact or enchantment that the defending player controls. It also gets a little bit bigger in that it becomes a 3/3. Then for more targeted removal, we've got Obnixilis Reignited. It's almost always using the destroy target creature ability the first time it hit, and then draw a card, lose a life. Not bad. Again, this is our only other Planeswalker from Ren, so there were quite a few games where I didn't have Planeswalker targets to even get from my graveyard. Both of them costing 5 is a little bit expensive, but they're very powerful, the effects that they have when they do hit. And then Soul Guide Lantern, one of my favorite interference pieces, as every turn you can use it to get rid of targeted pieces from an opponent's graveyard, but you can also sacrifice it to draw cards, so that's typically what I was doing. And then if there was any opponent that was gonna try to reanimate something, I would just sacrifice it and exile each of my opponent's graveyards. So very powerful in this deck. And then we've got a couple of board wipes in the Deathbringer Regent and Necromantic Selection. Recognize the Deathbringer Regent, even though it's a creature and you can bring it back, it won't trigger if you play it with Muldrotha, because it only works if you cast it from hand. So it's going to destroy all creatures if there's 5 or more on the battlefield. And then Necromantic Selection is going to allow you to keep one of the things that's out as your creature, and it'll become a zombie. Typically, you're going to probably want to choose Muldrotha. She's going to allow you to get more of the things back from your own graveyard. Next up, we're going to talk about the cards that provide consistency. We are running 14 of them. Obviously, Muldrotha is one, as she allows us to get so many things back. We have a few other cards that sort of mimic her. Emery, Lurker of the Lock. It is a 3 to cast creature, but oftentimes, because of her affinity for artifacts, I was playing her for just a single blue. When she enters, she mills 4 cards, so it gives you more card selection, and then you can get artifacts back from the graveyard using her ability. And then Marin of Clan Neltoth is going to get us a creature back to our hand at the end of turn. She gets experience counters when our creatures die, so since we're sacrificing a lot of stuff, it's not very hard to get her up to a high experience count, and then instead of going back to hand, they just go straight to the battlefield. A couple other repeatable abilities are the Soul of Innistrad, which gives us a 6/6 Death Toucher that allows us to return 3 creatures from our graveyard to our hand, and then the Mimic Vat, which gives us a repeatable creature use. I was typically getting this on, one of my Edict creatures. Be careful you don't put it on the Accursed Marauder, as the Mimic Vat creates tokens, and Accursed Marauder you can't sacrifice to that ability because it will be a token creature. You can also get some really fun cards off of your opponent. I had one game where I got a 7/7 flying Ureni off of the Mimic Vat, and then I was just beating people for 7 in the face with the Ureni. Didn't have a lot of dragons, but it was just kind of fun. And then the Vessel of Nescency with Muldrotha out gives us a repeatable way to dig. You're going to look at the top 4 cards of your library, and then you can put an artifact, creature, enchantment, land, or planeswalker from among them into your hand. I never missed once, as we're running so many of these. I don't know what the odds are on the math, but pretty low chances, I think, of hitting, only sorceries or instants with that. Invasion of Amonkhet, a new card to me that I haven't played with before, really works well with the theme of our deck, as it mills us 3, really mills everybody 3. Everybody else, however, discards a card, and then we're going to draw a card off of this. You end up giving this battle to one of your opponents, so you usually pick the player that's, kind of behind, as it makes it easier for us to get in on them. When you can deal 4 damage to this battle, you get to exile it and then return it to the battlefield as the Lazotep Convert, so it'll be a 4/4 of some kind of creature in anybody's graveyard. You can get something out of your own, but typically I was using something from my opponents just because I thought that was fun. Here's some ways that we're going to draw cards and hopefully play extra lands in a single turn. This deck is really mana hungry, so explore, draw a card, play an extra land. Growth Spiral and Plantar Genesis come with the upside of being able to be played at instant speed, so you can leave mana up to do stuff, and then at the end of the last opponent's turn before you, use either of these, and then Plantar Genesis is going to look at the top 4, and then we can put a land from among them onto the battlefield tapped. Coiling Oracle is basically that same ability, but on a creature. However, it's only going to be, the top card of your library, so you're typically drawing a card, but if you're lucky, you can get a land onto the battlefield instead. Grapple with the Past gives us a way to mill, as well as return a land or creature from our graveyard to hand. Don't be afraid to just fire this off if you got extra mana, just to get a little bit more card selection in your graveyard. Gaunty Lord of Luxury, fun card that exiles 4 cards from the top of an opponent's library, and then we can put one of them face down and we can cast that card at any time. Great retarget effect for Muldrotha. You can just be aggressive with Gaunty, or you can use it as a blocker, which is typically what I use the Baleful Strix for, a 1/1 flying Death Touch artifact creature that draws you a card whenever it enters. One of my favorite things about it is that it's 2 card types, which there are a few of in this deck. So, if you have a different creature you want to bring back, you can bring back the Strix as an artifact, or if you had an artifact, vice versa. So a very versatile card in this deck. Lastly, we're going to talk about the lands. We are running 41 of them. We're going to start off with fetch lands, because these are the ones that I found to be most important. Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, and Foreboding Landscape can all be sacrificed to get a forest, swamp, or island to the battlefield tapped. Foreboding Landscape comes with the upside of being able to tap for a colorless, or you can cycle it for 3. I don't know that I ever cycled it in playtesting, but I did use it sometimes for a colorless. But it was nice to have the option, at the end of turn to be able to sacrifice it. Muldrotha's great. She just brings these back turn over turn, so it allows you to continue thinning your deck, and then you don't have to use the land drops from your hand. Blighted Woodland and Myriad Landscape allow us to get 2 lands from our library to the battlefield tapped. Myriad Landscape at a significant discount in terms of mana relative to the Blighted Woodland. There was one game I played with the Myriad Landscape where I was able to actually get all the basics out of my library to the battlefield, which was quite a few. Cryptic Caves, another one that I didn't use often but did come in handy a couple of times, in that you can sacrifice it to draw a card. You do have to have 5 lands, however, to activate it. Port Carfel. This was a new card I learned of when I was researching this deck. It's kind of like the weaker version of Command Beacon, but it was protection essentially for Muldrotha, in that you can sacrifice it for 6 mana, mill 4 cards, and then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So there was several games where I had opponents that really could not deal with Muldrotha because they could not deal with the Port of Carfel. They weren't running any targeted land removal or anything in their deck, so I didn't mind her going to the graveyard. Just activate the Carfel and then replay it as your land for turn. It also mills you, so this was a surprisingly powerful card and a new to me card, so that was cool. And then Tectonic Edge was going to be our way to deal with our opponent's problematic lands, as it'll tap for a colorless, but we can also destroy a non-basic land as long as an opponent controls 4 or more lands. I did get into one game where 2 of the players got wiped out. It was just me and one other person, and I just used Muldrotha turn over turn to slowly get rid of my opponent's bounce lands. Every time they missed a land drop, they'd get closer and closer to that number of 4. I think they got finished off when they only had 5 left, so I didn't all the way whittle them down, and it's kind of a mean way to play, but that's what I had to do to win that game. And then Bojuka Bog, our own way to, deal with our opponents that are playing graveyard-centric strategies. I actually had one game where I used the Tectonic Edge on my own Bojuka Bog to then play my Bojuka Bog from my graveyard as land for turn to get rid of an opponent's graveyard. So don't forget you have that option as well. Mosswort Bridge just gives us some more card selection, as we can play a card that we've hidden away as long as we have 10 or more power on the battlefield. Command Tower and Opulent Palace give us all of our colors. Path of Ancestry also gives us all of our colors and comes with the upside of being able to scry 1 whenever we play our commander using it, which did happen, several times. So it's basically an Opulent Palace, but a little bit better. Then we've got Golgari Rot Farm and Simic Growth Chamber, a couple of bounce lands that can tap for 2. And then Exotic Orchard, typically in most pods this was tapping for all my colors, but it could end up being just a colorless for you. And then we've got Haunted Mire and Tangled Islet, both of which are a Swamp Forest or Forest Island. So we've got a Farseek in the deck, which allows us to fetch an island or swamp, so be mindful of that if you need a little extra color fixing. And then lastly, for basics, we're running 11 forests, 7 swamps, and 5 islands. Average CMC of the deck was 2.71. There you can see the curve, very heavy on the 1, 2, and 3 drops. Keys to victory, when I was losing, it was typically because I ended up against somebody who had a go wide token strategy where they would just flood the board with a bunch of things. We're running so many edict type effects for our removal, so not powerful enough. I really needed a board wipe. So if you're running somebody who's got that, maybe try to knock them out of the game first. Then you're going to want to try to protect Muldrotha. There were some games where I didn't have any protection in hand, and I was okay with playing her, mostly because I was playing a land from my graveyard, as that kind of protects you in the sense that you're not using one of the lands from your hand. So if she does get removed, it doesn't hurt you too much, in that if you have another land drop in your hand, she's ready to go. I would just say make sure when you do play her, you're getting some kind of value out of it, getting some permanent from your graveyard to the battlefield. Ideally, you're hitting a land each time off of her. Lastly, I want to say you're going to want to maximize the use of your graveyard. So typically when I got Muldrotha out, I was just essentially playing out of my graveyard and only using the cards from my hand if I needed them for some type of effect that I didn't quite have yet in my graveyard. That way, if the board gets wiped or your graveyard gets removed, you've got a full grip that you're able to play with and just continue your game plan. I will note that Muldrotha your opponents are really going to be gunning for her, as she creates so much value for her or for you. So you're gonna have to be mindful of that, as she can create for some unfun play cycles, especially with all those edict effects. Here's some budget-friendly upgrades I would definitely put in if I was to go above that $1 price point. Perpetual Timepiece is just a better elixir of immortality. You're not gaining life. You can only use it once, as it doesn't shuffle back in, but you can use it each turn to mill the top 2 cards of your library. Kaya's Ghost Form I had before in my own build of Muldrotha when she first came out back in Dominaria, and this is a great card for protecting her. It is above that $1, unfortunately, so hopefully that gets a reprinting. And then Glenelendra Archmage is just going to be a really strong way for you to lock down the board, as most board wipes are going to be non-creature spells. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel. You can do so by clicking the icon on the left of your screen. Otherwise, YouTube thinks you'll like the video on the right.